On our Friday broadcast, the firestorm in California. Thousands are on the run. It's the firefighters against the flames, with some of the fires out of control. Was it worth it? Here's the photo that caused a near panic in Lower Manhattan the day of the Air Force One photo op, and now the White House has made a change. Using her head, a big announcement today, and it's a crowning achievement for a symbol of our nation. Call of Duty, saving homes, saving lives, all in a day's work, and it's all about making a difference. Nightly News begins now.
From NBC News World Headquarters in New York, this is NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams.
Good evening. The normally beautiful sunsets in Santa Barbara, California have become something to dread these days, because that's when the hot winds come roaring down the hills, literally spreading fire. Tonight, there's a ground war going on, and there's an air war. Thousands of people have been run out of their homes. Firefighters, over 2,000 of them, are getting to as much of it as they physically can. Our own Miguel Almaguer has been on the fire line all day again and is with us from there again tonight. Miguel, good evening.
Brian, good evening. Tonight, this fire continues to chew across Santa Barbara. It has devoured more than 3,500 acres, and the damage isn't done yet.
This is definitely the most active flank of the fire.
Tonight, the fight for containment rages on as flames continue to race across the Santa Barbara foothills, jumping a highway and closing in on populated areas.
Very dangerous, very active fire, and unpredictable.
Miguel Almaguer again tonight from Santa Barbara. Miguel, thanks. And now we move inland and to the east across the country, where several states got pounded by severe weather today. 4 people were killed, 160,000 people without power. That's in just Illinois and Missouri. Several tornadoes were spotted in the Midwest. There was a wind gust in Carthage, Missouri today of 98 miles an hour. Not far from there, an elderly couple sucked out of their car, blown 100 feet through the air. For a time, the cluster of weather was moving east at 50 miles an hour. Well, now it can be shown, the photo that caused a near panic in Lower Manhattan a week ago. It's a lovely photo with the Statue of Liberty just below Air Force One there, just as they planned it. Problem was the sight and the sound of a 747 being chased across the sky, doing a low pass over the New York area, flooded 911, sent a lot of people into the streets, where memories of 9/11 are still fresh, of course, and it has cost a White House aide his job. Luis Caldera, former Secretary of the Army, was until today the head of the White House military office in charge of those flights. He tendered his resignation to the president. In the report the White House issued today, one official said the problem was, quote, a lack of public notification, and a whole lot of people in New York would agree with that. For more on this, we go to our chief White House correspondent and political director, Chuck Todd. Chuck, this story spread like a prairie fire. You and I were watching that afternoon, the afternoon of the flyover. The White House still didn't realize the magnitude of what had happened here.
They didn't realize the magnitude, and they were stumped about the actual story itself. And of course, they ended up ordering an internal probe. Deputy White House Chief of Staff Jim Messina ended up taking a look and finding out what happened. Well, as we now know what happened, Luis Caldera, who has resigned, though it looks like he may have been forced out, basically had a dereliction of duty here. He did not inform the Deputy Chief of Staff what was going on. He did not inform Robert Gibbs what was going on, despite the fact that his deputy told him he thought it might be a good idea, let him know what was going on. My favorite part of the report might be is that every excuse in the book here, I didn't read an email, he sent it to the wrong email account, I don't check that email, but also pain medication, Brian. He had had some back spasms from a trip he went on with the president down to Mexico, and he had said he'd been taking some pain medication, and maybe that was the reason he didn't notice the email about this flyover.
And real quick, Chuck, also at the White House today, the White House announced the president will be giving an unusual speech, unusual location overseas. He's going to go to Egypt, and this caused quite a stir.
It is, because this is a speech that the president promised he would give if elected. He would go to a Muslim capital and make a speech to the Muslim world, trying to explain the role of the United States in the world and what it means that to try to improve relations. Doing it in a Muslim capital, he thinks, will send a symbolic message as a way of trying to start a better conversation. For the Obama administration, they believe this will be one of the 5 most important speeches he ever gives.
All right, Chuck Todd, who will be on Air Force One for landing in Cairo, Egypt, when the date arrives. Chuck, thanks. Now to the economy, and a jobs report out for the month of April. A better number than economists expected. Employers cut 539,000 jobs, which, believe it or not, is fewer than the past couple of months. The unemployment rate jumped 0.4% to 8.9%, the highest it's been in more than 25 years. Wall Street actually rallied. The Dow was just up just under 165 points on the day. And for more on what's driving all of these numbers, we're joined here in our New York studios by CNBC's David Faber. David, are we down to defining good news as an absence of bad news? Update us on where this financial downturn stands.
Yeah, you know, Brian, I think the best that can be said about that employment number is, like a number of other indicators that we've been seeing over the last month to 6 weeks, it is about the worst getting a little bit less worse. Now, that's not to say much. In any other environment, as you said, 539,000 jobs lost would be terrible. But coming as it does after a loss of over 660,000 jobs the month previous, it doesn't quite look as bad. And economists and investors are looking at any number of different signs that they feel at least show that we are near, if not at a bottom in this economic decline. The hope is that the number of job losses will start to lessen from here as well, given it already has month to month. But there are still a lot of questions in terms of how much further we have to go and whether, in fact, even these signs that we're seeing are truly representative of a recovery to come. Time will only tell on that front, I'm afraid.
But wouldn't it be nice if it was the start of a run of good news? David Faber among our friends from CNBC. Dave, thanks for stopping by. Now we turn our attention just north of here to Connecticut, where a young man is being held on $15 million bail, charged in the shooting death of a young woman, a junior at Wesleyan University. The victim had complained of being stalked by the assailant. Now everybody is asking how this happened. Our report from NBC's Peter Alexander.
The case of State of Connecticut versus Stephen Morgan.
Looking haggard and at times confused, 29-year-old Stephen Morgan stood silently in a Connecticut courtroom, facing a judge and murder charges. Police say Morgan shot 21-year-old Johanna Justin Hinich, a Wesleyan University junior, Wednesday inside this bookstore at the cafe where she worked.
He's in a state of shock, as I indicated, about this whole thing.
Investigators say this surveillance photo shows Morgan with a gun at the crime scene, where they say he also disguised himself with a wig and glasses. Authorities say Morgan began harassing Justin Hinich when they first met during a summer program at New York University in 2007, with dozens of threatening emails and phone calls. Here at the scene, detectives say they found Morgan's handwritten journal with disturbing entries inside, including anti-Semitic passages and threats to kill the victim. Entries Morgan allegedly wrote just hours before the murder. The deadly shooting launched a nationwide manhunt that forced the university into lockdown and put the Jewish community on high alert. Morgan's youngest sister went on TV.
Steve, turn yourself in right now to any law enforcement agency.
Authorities say last night Morgan walked into this convenience store 10 miles from the crime scene. After seeing his picture on the front of the local newspaper, he asked the clerk to call police and turned himself in. In an arrest warrant, prosecutors outlined Morgan's obsession and his hatred toward Justin Hinich, whose friends today are stunned.
I mean, if you interview 100 people on campus, 101 of them will tell you that she's a nice person.
Justin Hinich posted these personal photos in her online diary and wrote that her goal in life was to live in the moment. Tonight, her family is planning her funeral. Peter Alexander, NBC News, Middletown, Connecticut.
And when our broadcast continues here on a Friday night, we will update the spread of this swine flu across the country and around the world, and we'll look at what an illness with that name has done to the U.S. pork industry. Later on, our Making a Difference segment. In a most direct way, though, tonight, the firefighters who put everything on the line in California. We get the latest tonight on the spread of swine flu in this country. There are more than 1,600 confirmed cases now across 42 states and the District of Columbia. Death toll in the U.S. stands at 2. Officials in Canada have today reported the first death there. 30-year-old woman who, like both victims here in the U.S., had underlying medical problems, officials say. With all of this talk about a swine flu outbreak, how do you think the pork industry is doing? In some cases, it's worse than you'd think. Our own Mara Schiavocampo talked about it with some hog farmers who are struggling these days in Collins, Iowa.
This is the center of America's pork industry. About a third of the nation's pigs are right here in Mara Schiavocampo, NBC News, Collins, Iowa.
When we continue here with the Friday edition of the broadcast, right off the top of her head, it may in fact be the best view of New York. Tonight, why the Statue of Liberty is in the news.
If you've had a Sunday, the war on terror and fighting the Taliban. 2 exclusive interviews with the presidents of Pakistan and Afghanistan, only on Meet the Press.
A couple of things here we thought you absolutely had to know before the weekend. First, a trend. Emma has replaced Emily as the #1 girl's name in the country. Emily was on top for 12 years, we're told. Jacob remains king of the boys' names, enjoying an 8-year run. The catch of the night at Yankee Stadium last night by an NYPD officer named Courtney Cozart. Look at that, showing smooth reflexes, good hands, and a big heart. Look at there, handing the ball to a kid. Look what Oprah started. You may have been a part of this. When KFC earlier this week was promoting their new grilled chicken, she announced free coupons for everybody on the web. That inundated KFCs across the country. Company had to apologize to chicken lovers who were turned away. They say they'll make good on it. Finally, Dominic DiMaggio has died. The Red Sox great always used to say he would only be known as Joe DiMaggio's kid brother, and that was fine with him. Because Dom wore glasses, they called him the Professor. He was also routinely called by sports writers the most underrated and overshadowed ball player of his era. Dom DiMaggio was 92 years old. And if you were watching the Today Show this morning, then you saw it, the most dramatic opening segment we can remember in quite a while. There they all are, our friends from the Today Show family, in the crown of Lady Liberty to announce some big news concerning that statue. Our report tonight from NBC's Mike Taibbi.
Our gift from France was always one of those vertical man-made wonders, like the Washington Monument, the Eiffel Tower, that enticed kids to say, "Can we climb to the top?" Yeah. And parents to say, "I guess, if you really want to." Well, maybe some grown-ups still like the idea.
I would walk every single stair to see the top.
I think it's awesome. It's about time.
But the Today Show's Matt Lauer got the scoop from Interior Secretary Ken Salazar this morning that treks to the top, suspended since 9/11, are on again.
Today we're announcing that on the 4th of July, we will open up the crown of the Statue of Liberty here in New York and New Jersey to the entire people of America.
If you ever do get up there, as I did in 1984 when Lady Liberty got a facelift for her centennial party, you will never forget it. Not everybody who wants to and who takes the boat out to Liberty Island will get to visit the crown. There'll be a lottery, a maximum of 30 people at a time. These Brooklyn 6th graders were so excited they didn't notice my crown was on wrong.
How many would want to climb all the way up to the top?
The statue was so huge, it arrived from France in 350 individual pieces in 214 crates and took 4 months to assemble. And your climb to the crown will be 250 feet up and 346 winding steps. Also, be aware that the statue is designed to bend in a brisk wind, several inches, meaning you can feel it moving.
I probably feel woozy because it sways back and forth.
But the point is, as of July 4th, if you want, you can feel it moving, even as it moves you. Mike Taibbi, NBC News, New York.
And when we come back here in New York, answering the call of duty and making a difference in the California fire zone. We have a special Making a Difference segment this Friday night. Special because it is part of tonight's news, our lead story, part of the drama that is unfolding in the rolling hills and normally beautiful countryside around Santa Barbara, California. It is more proof that firefighters are a special breed. More simply, they are more than willing, anxious really, to run in just when others are running out. 2,300 of them are on the job tonight in California. 3 of them were injured while trying to save the homes of of complete strangers, and this is their story. NBC's George Lewis has our report.
Spyglass Ridge Road above Santa Barbara Wednesday night. As the flames kicked up, there was a warning on the firefighters' radio.
Up here on Spyglass and got high wind, about 30, 40 miles an hour.
Eventually, the wind would gust.
Will save potentially tens or hundreds of other people.
And that makes a huge difference when the hillsides are burning. George Lewis, NBC News, Sherman Oaks, California.
Why we call it Making a Difference. By the way, it's not too early to mention a special twist on our popular series of Making a Difference reports. Next week here, we profile 5 remarkable women across the country, all making a difference for people in need. For now, that'll do it for our Friday night broadcast and for this week. Thank you for being with us for all of it. I'm Brian Williams. We hope to see you right back here, of course, Monday night. In the meantime, have a good weekend. Good night.
Monday on Today, Elizabeth Edwards, tough, smart, and a survivor. Matt's candid interview, live on Today only.